Hi, guys. This is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio. Nice to be back with you again. You're all aware that we've had a lot of great guests on the show talking about the issues represented by California's law that was coming out of SB 277, and that made it mandatory for anybody having their kids go to public school, but even also private school, that they had to be injected with whatever CDC and the state thought was a good idea to inject them with, violating all kinds of constitutional provisions, in my opinion, and opinion of many others. And we've had nurses and people leading all kinds of movements to try to get those freedoms restored in California on the show, and people from the Vaxxed movie and all kinds of great contributors. But then I saw a story in one of the news feeds that I get about a medical doctor in Northern California who was actually moving to bring a lawsuit to try to get some of these situations remedied. And I thought, wow, that would be really fantastic. And this must be a very courageous person. And it must be driving the authorities crazy, which is great. And I thought maybe he'd be willing to come on and explain the whole situation to us in person. And this is Dr. Ron Kennedy. And thanks for being with us, Ron. I'm really grateful that you're here. And we just want to make the point of this discussion is to give you a platform to explain the whole situation, what you're doing with it, where it came from and where it's going, and what people can do to support you. And then we'll see where we go from there.
All right. Well, first came SB 277. It was not a surprise to everyone, but for me it was. I was having a nice coffee at Starbucks one morning in 2015. I believe it was about September. I pick up the paper and I read, the governor has signed a new bill. And so I read and I realized what it was. I was shocked. And within 24 hours, one of my patients had called me and said, Have you heard of this new bill? The governor just, I said, well, yes, I have. Interrupted my coffee the other day and saw it. And he said, well, I have a child, and I have good reason for this child not to be vaccinated, and I see that we have to see a doctor about this if we want an exemption. So okay, I gave him an appointment, and he appeared, and I agreed after taking the medical history and looking at the child and so forth, and so I issued the exemption. Well, I didn't know that I was going to become a specialist in this, but fairly quickly, people were calling me from all over for this kind of evaluation, and so it went on like that. And I did the best I could, given that the medical board has not published any particular standards for what would be acceptable to give a medical exemption. I kind of fell back on my own devices and improved those methods over the following months, and to the present time, when we take a thorough family history, see the child, examine the child, and also take a thorough family history, and then have DNA testing, and then write an exemption if it's justified. Well, the medical board remained fairly quiet about that until I got between one of these things like Dr. Sears did back in 2015. They almost immediately came after Dr. Sears, which is probably our finest pediatrician in California.
Do you want to give people some background so they know what you're talking about on Dr. Sears?
Sure. Dr. Sears had a case where he granted a medical exemption, and it turned out that the father objected. And so there was a big court battle there between the mother and father on a divorce and so forth. And so the medical board says, well, show us the medical record. And then he did, being a trusting doctor. And they picked it apart here and there and everywhere, and as they are experts at doing. And they put him on probation, and it was long drawn, a 2 to 3 year process for Dr. Sears. So we were all put on notice at that point that the medical board would be hard on you if they discovered that you're getting vaccination exemptions. Nevertheless, I continued to give them and doing it by the best standards I could come up with. And then I guess it was late 2017, around November of 2017, I ran into the same situation. And the mother thought she had full custody, and she didn't. And then that started a fight between the mother and the father, and that involved me. The father, being an angry person, he turned that into the medical board, and so here they came after me. Well, then the mother objected to having medical records turned over, which is her right. There are state and federal laws which prohibit that unless it's with the mother's consent. The medical board can override that in the case where damage has been asserted, but there was no damage. In fact, I went ahead and invalidated the exemption when I found out the father was not for it, and the children were then vaccinated. Well, they had their reactions, and it wasn't pleasant for them, but they somehow they got through it, and they're still getting 61 vaccines by the time you're 6 years old.
Wow.
And so that I told the medical board, look, I'm not giving you that. And I had a lawyer, got a good lawyer on board, and he said the same thing. And so they were quiet for a few months, but then they began to go to different schools. And they say, turn over the medical records of all the children who have vaccination exemptions. And what they're doing, not just with me, but with other doctors, they're making lists of doctors who give medical exemptions. And then they're on your doorstep again and saying, hey, doctor, we have to see all these medical records. Well, no, you don't, because no assertion of damage has been made. And all the parents I talked to objected strongly to anyone else seeing those medical records. They're private.
Right.
So the medical board got a court order for it, and so I then got my attorney who intervened, and we're taking the medical board to court. Actually, we're taking each individual on the medical board to court. I believe 5 of whom are not even doctors, and we're asserting that the medical board is operating outside its authority, and that they should stop this behavior. And our intention is to get a precedent-setting ruling from the court, which in essence would say, well, we can't do this with Dr. Kennedy, and you can't do it with anyone else, any other doctor, except for good cause. So that's where it stands right now, and we're waiting for the court to be scheduled, and should be within a matter of weeks. The lawsuit is filed, and I have, of course, funded this out of my own funds. I look for the very best lawyers, and I have one here in California and the other from New York. Mm-hmm. And he'll be coming out to be in court with us when that occurs very soon. And so the bill so far is $98,000. Wow. And my funds are just about out, as you can imagine. So I'm on the market for generous people to donate to the cause if they really believe in this cause, if it's an opportunity for them and they feel good about it.
Right. So well, a couple of questions. One is, you said 5 of the medical board members are not doctors. How many members are there total, including the doctors?
There are 16, but I think 2 of those are actually secretaries, but mm-hmm. Therefore 14, and if I remember the count right, 5 are attorneys. They're attorneys on the medical board. So
wow, that's interesting.
Ask yourself why that is.
Yeah.
But at any rate, they have to answer for their actions now. Now we expect probably in the lower court to not get a favorable ruling. Mm-hmm. Even if we do, there will surely be appeals from the other side. Right. So this is most likely going to climb up the ladder, and maybe even to the California Supreme Court. and there we would settle the matter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so we need to bring this to anybody that would be sympathetic and understand the basis of what you're doing and want to support it.
Yeah.
And if they do they get in touch with you, or what's the protocol?
Well, there are two things you can do. You can write to me and get on my contact list so that I can keep you updated. And my email address is the word Nexus, Nexus, at sonic, SONIC.net. So Nexus at sonic.net.
Okay.
Also, you can go to my website to make the donation if you just want to go straight to that and you feel that you have enough information. And that website, and by the way, I'm proud of the website. Take a good look at it. It's the word medical, then a dash mark, and then library.net. And then you'll see the donate button in the upper left.
Okay.
So medical dash mark library.net.
How did you decide to make the medical board the target of your lawsuit?
Oh, because they are the ones who are pursuing doctors, gathering data from schools. And by the way they do that is they go to the school principal or superintendent and say, look, turn over the medical records. Well, if they say no, there's laws against that. We're going to get a court order. And very often the principal or superintendent will cave at that point because they really don't want to get into a legal fight.
Yeah, right. They probably figure that they'd be fighting an enemy with unlimited funds, right? In the courts.
And that's what doctors believe, and that they've driven a number of doctors, many doctors, away from offering this service to their patients out of fear of the medical board. And I understand these doctors are late; they're in the middle of their careers, many of them. And they simply are not willing to risk their license to stand up for something like this.
Yeah, exactly. We've also heard that a lot of those same doctors that wanted to grant exemptions to people were getting attacked by their insurance companies. And they were told that if they kept doing that, they would have no more medical insurance, no more, malpractice insurance. That would be gone. Is that connected, or is that a totally separate problem?
Well, I don't carry malpractice insurance. I've gone bare my entire career. I've never had a problem. No one's ever complained about possible malpractice. But so I haven't come into contact with that.
The other kind of insurance that's been attacking them is the insurance that people use to pay their bills for that doctor. And they're saying they'll stop covering them.
Well,
that's
as far as I know, the service is not coded, so that insurance companies maybe are getting codes that are not really made for that kind of service, and from their point of view, that isn't even a valid service. So I kind of understand the insurance company's point of view. I advise my patients, look, this is out of pocket. Sorry to tell you, but this is out of pocket.
Right. Well, no, these guys are not threatening to not pay for the consulting for the exemption. They're threatening to not pay any more bills for people that want to go to that doctor.
Well, that's really severe, isn't it?
It seemed to me.
I'd not heard of that.
Yeah, but it seems like your target is near the center of the whole issue, because, as you say, they're the ones going to the schools, and I guess they're closely connected with the legislature too, in case they need to pass further laws or things like that.
Well, the medical board is friendly to the legislature. Let me say this: they are obligated to obey the laws of the land, and so you can trace that back to the California legislature and a certain doctor who is busy pushing that mandatory vaccination idea.
Yes.
This is, as I see it, the first stage, and I know many people want to fight the actual law itself, which
right.
which would be done in federal court. against the state of California.
Okay.
So if we could get that kind of ruling, then this entire mandatory vaccination thing could go away across the United States. Now, you can imagine that the pharmaceutical companies are going to really resist that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There goes big profits. But that's another subject altogether, and that's probably a fight that's around the corner. We'll see how that comes.
Yeah, exactly. I think right now, not only would they resist that, they want California to lead the way for the other states into getting rid of exemptions nationwide. And there's a lot of indication that that's the plan right now. But I know you want to keep this on a very narrow subject, right? So you're focused on exactly what you're trying to accomplish in court.
Yeah. In worst case, it could progress to what they have in Australia. And if you're in Australia and you speak against vaccinations, they threaten you with jail time.
Yeah, in Europe
Even
too.
If you just speak, don't do anything, just speak.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a powerful movement toward that in the U.S. right now. In fact, there have been discussions in the legislature that it should be criminalized to complain about it, and it should be eliminated off the internet. So I know they're working on that. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
Yes.
The basic argument that they're coming up with, which apparently a lot of the legislators believe, is that if you let these crazy people get exemptions, it's going to kill everybody, because that's the reason that vaccination won't work, because of the people who don't get it.
Yeah. And the people who are vaccinated, they fear getting illnesses from people who are not vaccinated, which makes no sense. Right. If vaccines are actually effective. But we know that they're not 100% effective. We know that, but it's not well known. It's not well known in the culture. Right. I joke with my patients that, look, if this goes a lot further, we're going to have to move to a nice communist country where we can be free.
Yeah, exactly, because some of those nice ex-communist countries are becoming more like what we're supposed to be in the U.S.
Yeah. Well, and I have Russian patients, and they tell me that's not going on in Russia right now. It's not.
It's not what? Sorry, couldn't
hear.
Well,
this movement against pro-vaccination, mandatory vaccination, that's not happening there.
Yeah, and it's incredible. I mean, if you want to know what countries are threatening to become a lot freer, look at the ones that are most demonized on the news. And, Russia's at the top of the list. They're pretty much responsible for every bad thing that's happening in the world, according to the news media.
It seems so. You can't even cooperate and be friends with them without.
No, that's so unfortunate, because they were actually pushing for an alliance with the U.S. to try to stabilize the world situation in 2016, and nobody's taken him up on that, unfortunately.
Right.
So.
Well, that's deep politics, and I'm not a deep politician, so.
Yeah.
Probably another side to that's pretty valid. I don't want to take sides on that issue.
Well, why don't tell me if there's other parts of the background that you'd like people to understand that don't veer too far from the focus you want to keep here. Because normally I would just be taking this off into all the other connected areas that seem really relevant and important, but I want to leave that kind of up to you in this case.
Well, I understand.
What background do you want to give people?
Well, there's a lot of argument for vaccines, obviously, and there's a great argument against vaccines, and there's those folks who are in the middle, but that's really not my focus at this point.
Okay.
I may at some point in the future get heavily into that, but it's not time for that.
Well, do you want to keep it as just a short message of what you're doing and how to support it and how to contact you, like you said?
Well, I think we have to push back first, make our doctors free to exercise their medical judgment, and if indicated, give vaccination exemptions. And then from there, there will be push back even further. If we lose this against the medical board, I think then we can expect it to come and envelop us in a much more powerful way.
Right. Okay, well, maybe you just want to leave it there, and that you're trying to do this on behalf of everybody who needs the freedom of choice, health freedom, and what to do with their own bodies as far as treatments go. And
Well, that would be a political discussion again, right or wrong. I'm not answering that question, but I am asserting that we have to at least save our doctors for the time being. That's what we have to do.
right, you're not entering the discussion of whether it's right or wrong to get vaccinated. You're just saying, I think what you're saying is that it should be the choice of the individual patient and the doctor whether to write them an exemption.
Well, that's what the law calls for now. It's not the individual patients or families cannot make that choice anymore. They must go to a doctor and get the concurrence of a doctor. And those doctors are quickly disappearing from the landscape because of fear of the medical board.
So the medical exemption is still legal in California. You just can't get it, is what you're saying, right?
Well, you can get it, but you may have to travel from one end of the state to the other to find a doctor who will even listen to you.
Yeah, exactly. And where does the pressure come in that they're afraid of losing their license? How does that come up?
Well, doctors understand that the medical board has great authority. And if they feel that you are practicing your medicine in a dangerous way, then they do have the right to throttle you. And there goes, if you're a doctor, there goes your career.
Right.
It's something that they worked for many years in college and medical school and postgraduate training, and maybe they're 35 years old when they get out and finally they can practice. And then here comes the medical board.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting. People think getting a license is going to represent more freedom. It actually represents much more control, right?
Yeah. And then there needs to be, the medical board needs to be there. There's no doubt. I mean, some doctors get, for example, some doctors get they get really kinky and do bad things. So that there has to be an authority.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the problem comes when they're not pure in their motivation, I guess, which is a situation right now that we're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, doctors, like everyone, we're none of us perfect.
Right. Right. I just want to make sure we're not missing anything that you would like people to know, or whether you want to keep it as a real short message, or what's your preference?
Well, I think we've covered what I want people to know.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, then we'll just run it like that. And I would just encourage everybody to contact you, go to your website, learn everything about what you're doing. You said you have a mailing list, right? That you keep people up to date?
I have a contact list, and I keep people updated on this, and of course I have the website where there's an opportunity to donate if you're so moved to do that.
Okay.
We need support. We need a lot of support, but I know it's out there, and I know it's good.
What I'm thinking is going to some of our major guests that have been in the general fight for freedom that includes the vaccine choice and what the doctors, their ability to act on their own conscience and knowledge and judgment rather than being told what to decide in each case, like talking about.
There are a lot of docs who, if they would speak freely, if they felt they could speak freely, would be speaking up, and some are beginning that, by the way. They've heard about this lawsuit, and they're kind of coming out of the woodworks a little bit.
Yeah. So we'll try to bring them out a lot more.
Okay.
It just deserves tremendous support. So thank you for being willing to do this, and see who else can get behind it.
It's a privilege and a great pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm glad to do it.
So hold on, and we'll say goodbye in the break here.